Okay, everybody, welcome back. In this video, we're gonna react. We are gonna react to some Serbian and Russian propaganda. And as always, if you have some ideas, if anybody wants for me to react to some videos, write it in the comments. But let's see what this Harry Potter looking fucking his grandmother's grave have to say about West Balkan. Let's go.
Neutrality Studies today with Dr. Višeslav. Welcome back, everybody, to Neutrality Studies today with Dr. Višeslav Simić, a professor of state strategy and governance based in Mexico. Višeslav, welcome.
Thank you, Pascal. It's an honor to be on your show.
It's great having you, and thank you very much for reaching out. You've worked a lot, actually, on the Balkans region, where you're originally from, and on the question of what the Slavs are and how they are within, how they exist within
what
the kind
Slavs? There's no Slavs in West Balkan.
European framework of international relations, and maybe we can start there. But before, give us a little bit more background on your work and how you came to now teach also in Mexico.
Thank you. Yes, I had to leave what used to be Yugoslavia before it was destroyed in 1988, early 1988, just at the time when Milosevic was taking over, and I got my political asylum in the United States, where I eventually ended up in Boulder, Colorado, where I went to school. Before that, I was in school in London, in here on the Hill, in England, in Great Britain, and I got a political asylum after actually having to explain a couple of times why I had to leave and why it would be dangerous to go back, because they were at that time convinced, and I have letters to prove, claiming that Milosevic was the greatest ally and asset and friend of the United States and the most progressive leader and all of that stuff. And we know how it ended. They killed him in The Hague in the end because they couldn't prove any of the charges against him, so they eliminated him.
Propaganda
From the game, and then we all now believe, at least in the West, that he was a war criminal and everything. I was the first actually who warned that he was going to be a disaster, although I will emphasize it even now, he
was a war criminal.
Did not cause the destruction of Yugoslavia. He was one of the evil forces there, an old-fashioned, kind of stupid, limited, intellectually and geopolitically old-fashioned communist who just got lost in the big game. And
this is a new thing they're trying to do in Serbia. They're saying like, nah, he wasn't Serbian, he was communist.
In the end,
he tried to save Yugoslavia. He didn't try to genocide everybody with the blessing from the church and the Serbian people. Nah, he was communist.
Tried to play a game with the US, and he lost. So in the end, I ended up in the United States, went to school there, and then my professors recommended me to go to Washington, D.C. to live in.
Still, I don't get why the fuck did this guy get asylum? The fuck, he ain't a fucking political refugee, he's an economical refugee.
Work there, which I did, had some letters of introduction, and had a very good career in front of me, but soon I realized that it would cost me my soul, and a public declaration that Serbs are evil and the cause of all the bad stuff in the Balkans, and basically...
Yes, they are. Fucking Serbs and Croats. Fucking no fucking body else. Yeah, and if you go more south, you go down to Greece and Romania, Bulgaria, but in West Balkan, Serbia and Croatia, they're the only people making problems.
We have always been the devil's instrument on this earth. So I refused that, and then I ended up doing some kind of secondary jobs for a while until...
So he refused to tell the truth, and then he got fired.
I found a place as a consultant and interpreter for top-level officials in the US, because they claimed that I was very good and educated, and I could actually translate and interpret all of these top-level negotiations and threats and blackmails and everything else that...
So he got a job to influence the thought process of American administration. Bro, this guy 100% spy.
It goes for U.S. diplomacy, in quotes, over the last couple of centuries, basically. Anyway, I didn't cry about it. I was very happy actually to be like the fly, the proverbial fly on the wall, because I could sit there and become another piece of furniture for these, princes of the earth, of this world, who decide the fate of millions of people, and nobody can lie to me what happened and how it happened and who sold what to whom and who was threatened and everything else. I can tell you stories about these things. They're very interesting and entertaining. Sometimes I have to entertain lots of friends, telling them stories all over again about the famous people who did this and that. Anyway, after a couple of basically 25 years of working in America, finally had a revelation, let's say, or a logical conclusion that world is collapsing and disappearing. So since I cannot go back to Serbia and have a productive and happy life there unless I visit as a tourist, I came to Mexico, which I always liked because of its culture and the lifestyle and climate and everything. I really enjoy living here and got a job. Again, a very interesting story how I ended up getting a job at probably the best private university in Latin America, south of the border, as they like to say in the US.
How the fuck did this guy get this job, bro? He's a fucking Russian spy and a fucking Serbian Chetnik.
And I was there since 2010, and people were saying in DC when I left, you are jumping from the horse's back onto a donkey's back, and now they're sending me emails saying, how can we move to Mexico? So in the meantime, I became a Mexican citizen and have a nice life here and everything, and now they cannot afford to actually, even though they have really good jobs, they're struggling to keep their ends meet. And I have lots of emails, and calls and visits. How can we move to Mexico? But it's now a little bit too late. Anyway, I studied, I taught here since 2010, and now I'm kind of quasi-retired because I had lots of problems even at this kind of very open university because of other colleagues, mostly European background, Western European Union, who came here, and then they clash with me, or my teachings clash. The students talk to each other. In the end, most of the students of these other professors come to my classes because they don't want to listen to ideology, propaganda. They come to learn, especially relating to Russia. And that was the biggest thing, since...
See, I fucking knew it, bro. This guy, he's a fucking spy. He's a fucking spy. Listen, how the fuck... He fucking went out from Yugoslavia before the war. As if... fucking spy.
2022, when I came out at the conference and said, there is no invasion. This is a legitimate act of aid by one state to another. They exploded. They just started screaming and, all of that stuff. So I kind of quasi-retired, which is also fine. I'm at that age when I can actually do that. And sometimes I give lectures and teach and privately kind of coach lots of students who continue their studies, master's degree and doctorates all over the place. And they're telling me now by email mostly, because I'm old-fashioned, I don't use these other things. They say Sima, as they call me Sima, or they call me Moctezuma, like Moctezuma, the emperor. They gave me a nickname, Moctezuma. Moctezuma, you were right. Like, everything is happening the way you said, so they're scared.
You see, the motherfucker, he manipulated all the fucking people, the kids in his classes. And now he can start, what's it called? He can recruit people. He's a fucking spy. This is normal spy shit.
But
hey, very brief intermission because I was recently banned from YouTube. Substack. Now, this is quite important.
No,
I mean, as soon as you have a different interpretation of what is currently going on, especially in Western Europe at the moment, you are immediately outcasted. I mean, it happened with great scholars like Ulrike Gero. Currently, the climate within academia, especially in Western Europe, is quite poisonous. And I'm very sad to hear that it extends all the way to Mexico. But then again, it also makes sense because it's a thing about how we view the world. Can we talk about how? I mean, you pointed out to me that still today, the way that Western Europe treats the Slavs, the Eastern Europeans, basically, and of course, the Russians are also a good part of the Russians are Slavs. Of course, they're non-Slavic Russians, including like Kazakhs and so on, and other and Khazars and other denominations.
That Slav shit, that's only propaganda from Russia. Fuck Slav, that's fake news.
But what do you think, from also your research, is important to understand how the West treats the Slavs, the Southern Slavs, the Yugoslavs? I mean, Yugoslavia is just Southern Slavic, right? Yugoslavia. You pointed out before the discussion that the Slavs in Eastern Europe is basically also today, even in international relations and history, often written out of history books, or just not perceived. Like anything west of, anything east of East Germany is basically just a.
Yeah, what the fuck should they write in the history books? Yeah, we have some Orthodox people, we have some Catholic people that is going around and fucking murdering and genociding Muslims. Yeah, sure, that's what they should write in history books, bro. Is this fucking Harry Potter looking motherfucker, does he even know what he's saying?
Blank spot. Can you talk about this a bit?
Yes, as you were saying all of this.
Listen, the West is fucking helping Serbia and Croatia all they can, but the Serbians and Croatians are dumb people.
I remember in 1992 when the sanctions were imposed by the UN Security Council against Serbia, at that time Yugoslavia, which was at that time composed of Serbia and Montenegro. And there was a big exhibit on the Byzantine, so-called Byzantine Empire at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. And a group of us went from DC, Serbians, because we consider ourselves part of the Roman Empire, and some of the Roman emperors, not some, but the majority.
How? What? This guy don't know history. Is he fucking retarded? How the fuck are you part of the Roman Empire when you fucking mean you're a Slav and fucking a migrant to the West Balkans? You fucking stupid retard.
Spain and today's Serbia, and if you include all the Serbian lands which were taken away from us, we gave most of the Roman emperors, and we never considered it Byzantine. It's just the Roman Empire for us, and they never called themselves Byzantines. They always called themselves Romanoi, the so-called Greeks. And our emperor Dusan, the soulful one, when he proclaimed his imperial constitution in the middle of the...
These Serbians are sick in the brain, bruh. They manufacture fucking history.
14th century, which was one of the, even today would be one of the most progressive constitutions.
He went to the 14th century now.
Constitutions in legal history. He called himself...
In that time, you know what they were called? Nothing, because they didn't exist.
Himself the emperor of the Roman Empire, not the Serbian Empire. He was obviously Serbian, and he was the Serbian emperor by blood, but he was the emperor of the Romans. And it's very funny to see these things when the West only considers themselves as, and they were actually the ones who destroyed Rome and created all the barbarian kingdoms.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. All the fucking churches in the fucking Holy Roman Empire was owned by the Holy Roman Empire. All the Byzantine churches were their churches. So all the churches you are trying to make claim to, they're not your churches. They're Byzantine churches. And before that, they were fucking Hellenistic churches or whatever it would be called. Pagan fucking holy places. So shut the fuck up, you stupid fucking moron. The Serbians are so fucking dumb. They think they can fabricate history and people's gonna believe them. Bruh, genetics says everything, so shut the fuck up. This guy, he looks German, bruh. He looks fucking German. He don't even look from West Balkan, bro.
Took more than 1,000 years to come back to the Roman culture and traditions. But anyway, we went to this exhibit and we were shocked. Actually, I didn't expect anything else but this that happened to us there. But my other friends were more artistic. They didn't know history or politics or anything. So they were really shocked and cried. Some of the ladies cried because Serbia was excluded. And then a couple of things that...
Serbia didn't exist, you fucking dumb idiot.
They actually, in the south, which is today Macedonia, they named it either Greek or Albanian. Because at that time they did not recognize Macedonia as Northern Macedonia or separate from Serbia and all that stuff. So that's another interesting topic to talk about.
At that time, there wasn't Macedonia or Albania, so even that's just foolish, bro. There was provinces, and they were controlled by the Byzantine Empire. So shut the fuck up, bro. What the fuck is this guy even trying to... He's trying to make a fabricated history to fucking create a national background to his fucking people who don't got a fucking national background because... all the territory they have, it's fucking stolen, bro. It's stolen from Muslims who got genocided off that land, bro. Fuck, bro. This guy, fuck Serbian history, fake history.
Because I have a family history with that, because I'll tell you another time, because my father was actually born there in exile. The king exiled my grandfather, and my father was born in the south of today's Macedonia, northern Macedonia. And then when he died, we asked for a birth certificate to complete the process. You know how it goes when somebody dies. And we got it from today's Macedonia, and it says that he was Bulgarian, changed our last name, said that he didn't have any citizenship, and that he was baptized in the Bulgarian church. You know, so they're rewriting history right as we talk. You know, so, but anyway, we were excluded, and then Russia had only like Kiev.
What the fuck is this guy talking about? Why was his father expelled? Wait, when was he expelled?
Macedonia, and it says that to this Macedonia, northern Macedonia. And then when he died, we asked for a birth certificate to complete the process. You know how it goes when somebody dies. And we got it from today's Macedonia, and it says that he was Bulgarian, changed our last name. And then when he, my grandfather, I'll tell you another time, because my father was actually born there in exile, that Serbia and all that stuff. So that's another interesting topic to talk about, because I have a family history with that, because I'll tell you another time, because my father was actually born there in exile. The king exiled my grandfather, and my father was born in the south of today's Macedonia, northern Macedonia.
What king? What king is he talking about? Is he talking about the Yugoslavian empire in after World War II? What king is he talking about exactly? This guy, bro, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about.
And then when he died, we asked for a birth certificate to complete the process. You know how it goes when somebody dies. And we got it from today's Macedonia, and it says that he was Bulgarian, changed our last name, said that he didn't have any citizenship, and that he was baptized in the Bulgarian church. You know, so they're rewriting history right as we talk. You know, so, but anyway, we were excluded, and then Russia had only like Kiev, and it said that it was run by the Greeks. You know, obviously the Greek lobby there in New York and in the United States is very strong, so they took it, and the so-called ecumenical patriarch in Constantinople, in today's Istanbul, is completely a CIA extension, and they take advantage to eliminate Russia, Russian church, Serbian church, any other, and to actually make everything.
There is no Russian church, Serbian church in fucking Balkan. That's fucking fabricated. There were Byzantine churches, and before that there were Hellenistic holy places, or whatever they're called. And bruh, these guys, what they're trying to do, they're trying to take Byzantine infrastructure and trying to rewrite history to suit their narrative, to be able to create a national foundation, because they don't have a national foundation. And I can even listen, the church is not even fucking for real, bro. He don't even know what the fuck he's talking about. If you go through the church line, he don't know what the fuck he's talking about. It's fucking scattered churches. They're trying to connect together. Nobody fucking heard about those churches, bro. It's all a fucking bullshit history. And this guy, he's trying to fabricate. What he's trying to do is create a satellite state shit, I don't know, through churches with Russia. That is Russia, how it did it in the fucking Middle Ages, is still doing it, bro. It's so fucking retarded. It's so fucking retarded, bro.
So-called Greek, even though it didn't exist at the time, you know, as a
And these guys think, okay, the Americans are dumb, but honestly, they're not that dumb, bro.
Nationality, or is a
Honestly, they might be. They might be.
Ethnicity. It was only considered as a religious community that was different from the Latin community. So that was something interesting. Again, they talk in all the schools. I was really educated mostly in the West. I had to interrupt my studies because of political problems in Serbia. And just before I graduated in Belgrade, in the School of Diplomacy, I had to leave in April, and I was supposed to graduate, I think, in June. I think that's when usually people graduate in that part of the world. And I had to continue my studies in the United States. And then I was shocked when they actually were teaching us in some of the classes that I took in politics and political science that nations were created in the 19th century. And I'm like, what? You know, like, this is absolutely.
You see how much that guy is indoctrinated. The history was written in Hungary, because in Hungary was the little satellite villages where they influenced Orthodox population in Balkan. Bro, don't get me started on their fucking fake history and how they made it.
Absolutely unbelievable that a professor would teach something so fallacious and so crazy and idiotic like that, when we know that Russians existed as a nation. We Serbs are one of the oldest. We have documents that claim this. They again, we were completely taken over by this in Serbia by now in the last 25 years, since 26.
They have documents. Why do you not carbon date those documents?
Since the US and the EU took over our educational system. So they're teaching kids in Serbia that there was never Old Serbian language, that it was Old Slavonic, Old Slavic language. And if you look into our writers...
There was no Serbian language. The Bosnians are the only native there. And all that Serbian shit, that's just fabricated.
And women writers who we have documents, beautiful poetry written by our princesses and queens and everything in Serbian, who claim that they write in Serbian, that they are Serbian, you know, like in 12th, 13th, 14th centuries. Saint Sava, the founder of the Serbian autocephalous, sovereign church, when he writes about his travels to the Holy Land 4 times, where he bought the monasteries and the Christ's grave and all of this stuff, spending lots of money on restoring these things in the Holy Land, when he says, I boarded the Serbian ship, and on the Serbian ship I traveled with our navy to the Holy Land. Like, why would he writing
Serbian ship? Bro, who's gonna tell him that Serbia is landlocked? Bro, this guy, this is the most sick shit, bro, ever.
in Serbian Cyrillic, saying that he boarded the Serbian ship, writing this in his own language as the Prince of Serbia, and he didn't write in our
Serbian ship, but the Serbians don't have even a fucking coast to put the Serbian ship in. What the fuck? And yeah, suddenly they put the ship in the water and everybody knew how to sail the ship, and this guy is sick in the brain, bro.
schools teach kids that we don't exist. The same thing in Russia. There is a big process of indoctrination and in creating this complex of inferiority, which is very obvious for centuries, because they've been doing this since, you know, like the last couple of centuries, especially since the Congress of Berlin in 1878. I'm very bad with numbers. When one of the preconditions for the international recognition of Serbia as a sovereign state completely in Montenegro was to accept the version of the history that was going to be sent from Vienna and from Berlin. So they call it the Vienna and Berlin School of History that was imposed upon us. The same thing in Russia, where...
Yeah, because they tried to start nations in that time. Russia tried to punch in that nation about Slavic unity, Slavic shit. While, yeah, the Catholics tried to push their history in. But fact is that the land belongs to the native Bosnian, Albanian, Illyrian. Before that, I don't know what the fuck they were called, but the native people. All these guys are not native. They're trying to fabricate false history, but they can suck dick, bro.
It was mostly the Germans who created the history of Russia and were teaching them that they were stupid and primitive, and it was only the Vikings who...
Bro, if he's correct in everything, why do they need to go out and kill and pillage and genocide and remove people from their territory if it's their land? It doesn't make sense. Factually, it doesn't make sense. Genetically, it doesn't make sense. Linguistically, everything is just bullshit. It's just jerking off in the wind. That is what Serbians are doing. Jerking off in the wind.
We're not Slavic. Totally crazy stuff that goes on that is contrary to all the chronicles and everything that was written. Even look into the old chronicles in the Czech Republic, in the Czech language. We learned that there was Old English, Middle French, High German, Middle German, like all this stuff. Everybody has their old version of the language, but no Russian doesn't. Even Ukrainians have their ancient language, supposedly, but no Russians never actually spoke anything. They were just primitive barbarians who just barked at each other, and suddenly they appear as a threat and all this stuff. So it's been a very...
This guy, he think Russia was some kind of big empire in the old times. It wasn't, bro. It became an empire after it went out and killed and murdered and genocided all the people in Siberia and the mountains over there. And bro, don't get me started, bro. Russia is even fake history.
Very persistent political... And I have a whole string of classes.
The Russian kingdom, the bloodline, the genetics are not even from there. This guy don't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's a fucking stupid retard.
on Russophobia that I was trying to teach, especially European Union students on exchange programs to Mexico, that to warn them that by the time they become parents,
he taught it to exchange students. Bruh, this guy, he's a fucking spy. How the fuck didn't America arrest him yet?
and have their businesses or have, start their careers, they will be drafted into a war with Russia if they don't learn this history and organize themselves and oppose this, because they're crazy leaders. This was like 10, 15 years ago in 2014, for example, when the whole thing came out in the open. And again, when I caused the scandal, when I said they were claiming that Russia is going to be defeated and all this stuff. And I said, Russia has already won. Just by doing this in the Crimea and in the Ukraine, Russia has already won geopolitically, philosophically, emotionally, and any other possible way except militarily. But it's a good process for Russia to get trained for the big clash with the evil empire, which will come very soon. And it has to be the United States. It's not going to be Europe. Europe will be like a flash in the pan.
So you see, this guy is preparing people to go to war. But if it's not a spy, if it's not a terrorist, it smells like a terrorist, it smells like a spy. But I don't know.
Couple of days, and then it's going to be a real war, because the real evil comes from the United States.
Do you view it as inevitable, by the way, that the international relations at the moment moves? And maybe we come back to the issue of nationality and ethnicity in a moment, which is very, very hard to somehow talk about, because there's so many, you immediately rub people on the wrong shoulder if you do. But why do you...
I may interrupt you. Remember your question. It's not difficult to talk about. It's difficult for these people to hear it. That's the problem.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Yugoslavia will always have a special place in my heart, because it's a fascinating part of Balkan history, and it's a beautiful place. And my friends from Yugoslavia, from all Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia and Kosovo actually, and who are now luckily married and have a good life, and I've visited them. And
did you see his little microaggression? Suddenly, this from going happy face to sad face when you heard Bosnian. I just gotta see it again.
Such a beautiful place in Kosovo. It's a fascinating part of Balkan history, and it's a beautiful place. And my friends from Yugoslavia, from all Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia and Kosovo actually, and who are now luckily married and have a good life, and I've visited them. And it's such a beautiful place that has so much, and so much is so vibrant in culture, really, in different levels of culture and how they intermix, because it has Turkic influences, it has from everywhere, Mediterranean and whatnot. But whenever I have a talk with somebody on my channel, I immediately get emails from somebody who says this is completely wrong, totally wrong. Whether it's about nationalism, ethnicity, and I had, for instance, Professor Dr. Zlatko Hacidedic on my channel, and who talked about how...
No, the problem is people are not factual. Be factual. Listen, there's records. There is so much written down. There's how empires wanted to fulfill their plans. There was... everything is written down, but some people refuse to be factual because that crumbles their whole narrative, and then they have to face some things that, it's just childish. It's like having two children while one person is trying to be grown up, but two of them are just like children, bruh. They're like retarded children. Not genocidal, retarded children. That's the problem. They cannot accept that, bruh, I don't know, bro. Like thieves. They steal, they cannot build, they can only steal. That's the fucked up part.
Toxic nationalism blew up Bosnia, and that is then opposed by certain other interpretations. So it's just also the interpretations of what happened historically are not only something that people go deep into, but that they also attach a lot of emotional value to, for obvious reasons, because it's very recent national history. What's the most productive way to strike up a conversation about Yugoslavia that does not end in a shouting match?
To recognize that everybody has a place there, that everybody has part to play or has.
That is what a genocidal person will say. Nah, bro, just be factual about the facts. Go through the genetics, go through everything, history, go through archaeological finds, go through linguistics, go through everything, and make a real analytics, not about myths. And if anybody got documents, carbon date everything. Listen, it's easy, but when some people refuse, it's not easy. When somebody want to be a genocidal kid, then it's not easy.
Played a part in the general history and the development of culture and enrichment of that area, and that nobody basically should deny anybody.
Enrichment. I only know 2 cultures who were going out and killing, and the one was Catholic, and the other was Orthodox. No other.
The current present existence or whatever they feel that they are, but that they must recognize historical and documented facts that cannot be changed. Otherwise, that will cause problems, and that is one of the biggest things, because I know lots of Serbs. For example, I drive Serbians, some of my friends even crazy when I say that I actually recognize the Croats have something that they always say, like a 1,000-year-long culture of Croatia, Croatian culture, which is actually true. They are a very old nation, that they are one of the nations that are very old and very defined throughout history.
You know why he has to accept Croatian propaganda? Because if he doesn't, he can't build his own. Because they're both built on propaganda and lies and myth. Bro, it's easy. Carbon date every document. If everybody means they have old documents from churches, it's funny, it's always from churches. But whatever. Carbon date it. Honestly, everybody knows it's easy to fabricate old-looking documents. Don't even get me started.
More than 1,000 years, probably 1,500, 1,600 years, just like the Serbs. But they cannot deny the same thing to the Serbs. Especially, they cannot kill us and exterminate and eliminate and eradicate everything Serbian that was in what they claim is Croatia. That's the problem. For example, my name Višeslav, they claim that it's only Croatian, and it's not. Obviously, I'm Serbian, and many times I would get hugs because they would see me in some of these forums in the United States when there were different delegations, and they would think that I'm a Croat, and they would treat me as a Croat. I would keep my mouth shut, and I had the biggest Croatian Nazi.
Honestly, let's be honest. His name, it sounds funny. Even his last name. It doesn't sound that, I don't know, bro. Don't get me started. I think this guy, he should go and make a genetic test, honestly.
Who live in the United States, who would actually show me pictures of the grandparents with heads of Serbs cut off and as trophies. And this happened in Portland, Oregon, at a conference where there was a Croatian minister of agriculture or something like that, I don't remember, who actually was a very decent person and tried.
His people did the same.
Did not get involved in politics. He was involved in working for, improving agriculture in Croatia, which was actually messed up by joining the European Union and was eliminated and destroyed, but that's a different story. So he didn't get involved in this, but I was part of his entourage with the State Department, and the other Croats who came to see him because he was a Croat, they came to me and they were showing me this. And then this guy from Croatia comes and says, do you realize that this guy is, as we were saying goodbye, they were hugging me and saying, if only Croatia would, I was young at that time and I went to the gym and I looked good and I was in a suit and I looked important, and they were saying, these were older guys, and we're saying, if only Croatia ended up in the hands of somebody like you. And this guy says, well, do you realize that the gentleman is actually Serbian? And they just freaked out completely. And I said, I wish even for one day Croatia would be in my hands, because I would change the political, if possible. Obviously it wouldn't be possible, but I want to emphasize, I recognize and I admire this centuries long, more than 1,000 years long strife and fight by Croatian nationalists for their independence and their specific roots and origins and characteristics and everything else. The only thing is, again, differently from what they teach in the West or what they propagate in the West, we never fought. Croats and Serbs never fought in our history until World War I, basically.
What the fuck is this guy talking about? He is delusional. He is fucking special kind of delusional.
When it was within the Austro-Hungarian Empire, they were drafted and they were trained and sent to Serbia to invade in World War I, and also Slovenians and Muslims from Bosnia. And we fought at that time. And then in World War II, there was this, so-called independence.
What the fuck? Bro, this guy don't know nothing about history.
State of Croatia, where there were these genocides of the Serbs and Jews and Gypsies, mostly of the Serbs in terms of numbers. And these were, and in the 90s, these are the only instances. We never fought. We actually collaborated. The old nobility of Serbia and Croatia, they actually collaborated in terms of fighting the Germans and the Ottomans or the
All this fake history.
Caliphate, the empire, there was never any problem. The Muslims in Bosnia never fought as Bosnian Muslims. They fought as good soldiers of Allah in the jihad against the infidels. They never saw themselves as Bosnians, as a nation. They are the creation of the Communist Party that wanted these converted Serbs or Croats, mostly Serbs from my research and from the facts that I know. We have documents when they converted. They know.
Bruh, it's the same fucking shit, but just a different way. Bruh, suck my dick, bruh. Come to Bosnia and suck my dick. This Serbian guy, come and take... Bro, come and find out. I can say nothing else. Come and find out. Your fucking people before came and found out. You're gonna send some nuke to find out, and you're gonna find out whose land it is. God damn, he beat it around the bush so long, and finally he said it. Bitch, you can suck our dick. This is our land, and you can do nothing, bitch.
That they will deny it. You'll probably get emails about this, but they were considered a nation, a Muslim nation. They were not Bosnians. They were written with the capital M. For a while, from 1974. Before 1974, when we got the new constitution in communist Yugoslavia, this is like a couple of years.
Listen, what he's doing, he's trying to package the same shit in a different way. We have heard it a lot of times. Oh, this, oh, that, oh. He's trying to build an idea because Bosnians, yeah, they were Muslim. And when you're Muslim, you see yourself as one big unity. And that's normal. The plan was after World War I. That is why the first Balkan War, second Balkan War, all of that, if you study just a little history, you will find out it was all about pushing Muslim native people to that area, who's been there for generations, who is the real owners of that land. The land is documented with names, who owned that land before the Serbians came, genocided, ethnically expelled, or forcefully converted, or whatever, bro. All this is documented. I don't know why this professor is acting dumb, like illiterate. Yeah, I understand it, because in the Western world, it's normal to propagate propaganda just to show yourself in a better way instead of being honest about history. So yeah, he's just trying to make fake history in a different way now. But what I have to say to the Serbs and the Croats, we fucked you up, bruh. Your plans up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, many times. This time it will not be the same. This time we have production, big production of arms. So, brother, there is a reason why your politicians just want to talk, even though our politicians have said to all of your politicians, we can go to war anytime you want, anytime you wish, we can do it. But you don't want to, you want now to propagate your fake history. But god damn, bro, he can fuck your mother's grandmother's fucking... What's it called? I fuck his grandmother's fucking grave.
Before Tito died, and he was already out of it. So these other forces were rewriting the constitution and
because this motherfucker, he want to kill me, motherfucker. So let me fuck your grandmother's grave. If he come, he will find out. He will find out what happened to his previous families who came to try to take over Bosnia.
Structuring the federation so that it would be ready for the breakup, which happened about 16 years later openly, but already in the 90s, in the 80s when Tito died, it started to break up. They created them into a separate nation as Muslims, as a Muslim nation, which shocked.
Tito, he employed 300,000 Chetniks, and that is why the Yugoslavia fell apart, because already they started with corruption. The Chetniks used that they were employed in the Yugoslav administration and went out and killed all throughout Yugoslavian time under Tito. So he can suck my dick. This professor, he's a son of a bitch. A donkey fucked his mother and then he got born.
Real Muslims who lived in other parts of Yugoslavia who said, even their leader said, you cannot be a nation, you cannot be a Muslim nation. There is a nation of Islam in the United States, but it's a totally different thing. It's a black thing, African American, whatever, but it's not like a nationality. And then in the 90s, when everything broke out in the open, they changed a couple of times, from Bosnians to Bosno-Herzegovinians to Herzegovinians. There was a big clash. I remember all this when they were fighting in DC, when I was there present, sitting next to them, just like Macedonians, when they would fight among themselves in the delegation, the official delegation of the new country of Macedonia, who is speaking Macedonian, because they didn't know what Macedonian was. It was actually a Croat who wrote them grammar and created the Macedonian language. Just like, there is that Bulgarian lady who found documents in the Austrian archives how the Albanian nation was created by the Austro-Hungarian Empire to cut off Serbs and Russians from the Adriatic Sea. Lots of different things I'm throwing at you right now, but we have to recognize that these people have a right. And there were forces in the 80s, in the early 90s, who wanted to unite on every side, who wanted not to unite, but to work together to come to a solution so there would be no war. And most of the people didn't want it. But it was the West, the United States, specifically their embassy. We have the documents. And
another lie. Whatever this motherfucker son of a bitch genocidal Serbian says, it was not the West who went in and killed. Whatever the West had of ideas or whatever the West pushed, whatever, I don't fucking give a fuck. I don't know if they did whatever they did, I don't give a fuck. The person who went in and killed and genocided was Croatian people and Serbian people. That's it. It was no people from the West. Yes, Russians sent them Russian soldiers, Greece sent them Greek soldiers, yeah, all of that, but it was Serbians and Croatians, not the fucking West who went in and killed. That's fucking lie and propaganda.
The testimonies of the now late Canadian ambassador who went with this guy, who invited him as an ally, thinking that Canada would just go along with it, and who, thank God, left us testimonies, first-hand experience and testimony, how they convinced the Muslim leadership, that horrible Satanist guy, Alija Izetbegović of Bosnia, to actually take away his signature from the peace agreement in Bosnia and start a war, and America will support them. The same thing they did in Ukraine, in the Ukraine later. As I always say, Yugoslavia was the playground to prepare everything for Russia. We were the experimental stage of what was going to happen to Russia, and later.
I hope all the Russians fuck this guy's mother. That's all I have to say.
To China.
Yeah. And I think that is overall, that's how it makes a good sense to view what happened to Yugoslavia. This breakup in the 1990s was anything but predetermined. There were a lot of ways to prevent it or to never ever let it go to that place. There were internal factors and external ones. When it comes to nationality, I think Professor Dr. Hadžidić would have a different interpretation of Bosnia back also in the 90s.
Nobody is gonna stay in Serboslavia. Serboslavia is dead.
Century, but we can put that one aside and just maybe also focus a bit on this, maybe let's just call it the racist part of the imperial project, which does contain divide and conquer. I mean, Yugoslavia was divided and conquered, and today it is conquered. If you look at the largest U.S. Military base in the entire region is in Kosovo, of course, and how these, yeah, let's leave it aside. Let's leave it aside. I mean, it's there.
The U.S. recognizes that Kosovo is part of Serbia. They have a signature on the resolution.
Shut the fuck up. When you go to Kosovo, you need a passport. You cannot go in without a passport to Kosovo. You get a thing in the passport when you go in and a thing when you go out. So this Serbian motherfucker Chetnik, fuck his mother.
Right. 1244 saying Kosovo and Metohija is a province of Serbia.
Yeah.
That supersedes any other political arrangement. This is international law, so we should stick to that.
In Serbian Kosovo, yeah, I don't know how.
Okay, international law, Sandjak is independent from everybody. It's its own region with its own autonomy. So let's just talk about Sandjak then, son of a bitch, Chetnik.
How to phrase it? But the point is the base is there, and we know how also the European Union is basically running Bosnia, and this way of control over an entire region. And I had it.
European Union running Bosnia. Bruh, I can't make this video too long, bro. It's already, I think, too long. Bro, what the fuck is this guy? European Union is trying to help Serbians and Croats in Bosnia all they can. But the Serbian and Croats are so dumb. They do not know what to do. They always do the wrong thing. But the Bosnians is fucking them. That is why economically the Bosnian areas are so much stronger, so much cleaner. And when you go into the areas... Bruh, don't get me started. Just look with your eyes, bro.
Just sorry that I need to do this, but I had this interesting conversation with a friend of mine, a Taiwanese friend, years ago, and I told him about
Belgrade, the largest city in Serbia, don't even have fucking plumbing, like centralized plumbing. What do you call it, bro? Those guys still dig a hole and the shit goes into the ground where the fucking house is, beside the house where the fucking garden is. Bruh, don't get me started, bruh. These guys can suck a dick.
my best friends in Switzerland, who again, Croat from Bosnia, from Herzegovina, husband Serb from Kosovo, yeah, and they had a lot of problems to get married because family history, but now they are and things are good, luckily. And I told my Taiwanese friend, how both of them, or all of them, all of their families were quite discriminated in Switzerland for a long time. The last syllable in your name, Simić, the ich will automatically out you, right? Especially in Switzerland, and the largest immigrant groups in the 90s, from the different Yugoslav parts. A lot of racism. And then I showed him a picture of my friends, and then my Taiwanese friend goes like, "Oh, Pascal, they're white."
They all look the same.
And,
Yes.
and I told him, like, yeah, that's how good we are in Europe to manage to be racist even against people of the same skin color. And we still do that to this day. And it brings us back to the Slavs, right? That, of course, the Russians and Mr. Putin is as white as is Mr. Merz and Mr. Macron. But that doesn't, the Russophobia still works. And when it goes to the Southern Slavs, to the Yugoslavs, there's a similar kind of racism. I mean, how do you view that part, which definitely is coming, that kind of racism is coming from the Western part of Europe?
Yes, I will tell you a funny story, and I'll try not to make it sound racist, even though it is actually, but reversed. I remember in one of the think tanks in DC, one of the institutes, I will not name it, I was waiting for a delegation. I was, of course, with the American side, and if I keep my mouth shut, I can pass, like all dressed up with a suit and everything, as an American, which I am officially an American citizen, and I was working for the American side from the State Department in this institute where they were supposed to have like this dialogue or whatever forum, and the Serbian delegation, this was just after Milosevic was overthrown, the new government and everything, and we are sitting there, and the Serbs were coming, whatever they were. I don't know if all of them were Serbs or they were other ethnicities, but a black young lady turns to me. She just happened to stand next to me. I never met her before and never after that, but I remember this. She turns to me and says, "You can tell the Slavs are coming. They stink," So I just swallow it and don't say anything, but I use it as an example that even a black person who will claim, probably she now was part of Black Lives Matter and Antifa or whatever, because this was, during the Obama years, she's claiming probably like racism against.
Now we have a problem with the blacks in America. God damn, bro. These guys...
Systemic racism against black people in the United States. She herself got this Anglo-Saxon, Western European, American racism incorporated into her psyche when it comes to Russians. And I said, this also cost me a lot of positions and jobs and.
You know what the funny is? The Russians actually came to Belgrade, the communist army. You know what they did to all the Serbians in Belgrade? They fucked them. They fucking kicked their doors in and fucking raped them and killed them. And yeah, but that don't fit his argument for all of this propaganda, so he ain't gonna talk about it. But everybody can go in and study what happened with the Red Army reached Belgrade.
Status in DC, when I said many decades ago that the racism that they cannot express anymore against blacks, Mexicans, women, women sentiments, Jews, whoever it is, because it's all forbidden, you lose your job. You concentrate that and you aim it, throw it at the white people from Europe who have no one to defend them and who are seen as evil, even though, especially Southern Slavs, we had never had colonies. We were not colonial powers. We were actually colonized. This is something that...
That's fucking lies. All the fucking identity is colonization of Bosnian and Albanian Muslim land. That's the whole identity.
Shocks my Mexican students many times when I tell them in classes, when they start saying, los españoles, like the Spanish are responsible for, everything that's bad in Mexico, it's the Spanish, I'm like, okay, don't be like the Serbs, like my people. Whenever something is wrong, it's the Turks, because we were under the Turks for 500 years, which is not true, but that's like a myth. And the Spanish were, the Mexicans or Latinos or the original population, so many nations here, like even today, there are 68 nations who deserve their own independence according to Western European and American standards when they're applied to Eastern Europe and Russia. Why don't they apply it to Canada and to the United States and to Mexico, for example, and then create 68 new countries in in Mexico, and about 420 in the United States, and over 600 in Canada. Can you imagine the United Nations suddenly has over about 1,000 new members, and the United States reduces to like a third of its size, and Canada just disappears basically. But anyway, I tell my Mexican students, shut up, don't complain. The Spanish have been gone since, let's say, 1810. In Serbia, the Turks have been gone since 1804. You cannot blame anybody but yourselves, and we cannot blame anyone but ourselves for all the little things, corruption and everything. We should fight it. So I'm very critical of my own. But then again, this racism is so internalized, they don't even recognize it. And you can see the smirk, like when you say something, like that actually the civilization started in what is today Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, the agriculture. There are documents and evidence and everything in agriculture, metallurgy, and all this stuff. They just go like, it's obvious. It's very easy to see.
Jesus fucking Christ, bro. Now he wanna make Serbia the first humans in the world. He's a fucking special kind of Richard case.
I remember in the UN, for example, I went again with an American delegation. This was during Yeltsin years and the early Ukrainian so-called independence, when in the Security Council there was a Russian ambassador and we were entering, and I remember a British guy, like second, third level, fourth level in the hierarchy in the British embassy to the United Nations, was telling, and I don't know if I should use it, I don't like to use bad words and all of that stuff, but I'm just quoting, he was calling them motherfuckers, the Ukrainian ambassador and the Russian ambassador in front of everybody at the UN, at the Security Council, it was like unbelievable in one of the sessions, aside, not in the main room and all this stuff. And they were just going, with the horrible conflicts of inferiority, because they were ready to take everything and anything, just not to be in Moscow or in Kiev, in the Ukraine or in Russia, because the fantasy was that the good life was in New York, in the UN. And I lived in Moscow, I worked in Moscow, in Russia, and later in Georgia, in Tbilisi. And I remember how I lived in New York before that. And I remember when I went to Moscow, even though I visited Moscow during communist times as a student, but I remember how much richer in terms of multiculturalism and everything else. It was poor. These were the worst years, 95, 96, when I was there, in terms of economics and finance and everything. But it was more grandiose than any time in New York when I lived there. And New York was dirty and filthy and cranky, and everybody was nasty, and it was filthy and greasy everywhere, and rats and everything. And even in those horrible years in Russia, it was still grandiose and magnificent. Of course, now you will get emails that Sima is like, totally obsessed with Russia and all this stuff. But the facts tell the story. Just go to Moscow today and you will compare it. You will see with your own eyes. Again, if you're part of the press corps, you will, like during the Olympics in Sochi, remember when they were showing like a toilet that doesn't work in the Olympic Village, and this is typical for Russia, nothing works and all that stuff. So, it depends what you want to see. But racism is there, and you can see it all the way back to 16th century from England. And it comes from this grandiose idea that came to England with the Jewish re-immigration and infection of the Protestants there under Cromwell, with this superiority complex that they picked up from the Jews, that they are the chosen ones. So this is the clash between the so-called Zionist Christians who claim that they are the chosen ones, and they actually hate the Jews. I know this. I have heard them when they speak openly, because they claim they're not the chosen ones, but they're useful to them.
Yeah, that's the point about Christian Zionism. They use the Jews in order to get...
Bro, this guy is all over the place. He's jumping from one thing to another thing to a third thing to a fifth thing to... Bro, he don't know what the fuck he's
doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the government in Israel is using, and those who support it, using the power of the United States. But that's a different story. But this complex of superiority in England grew from this Protestant kind of vision of themselves as being chosen, and then when they immigrated to the United States, they installed it in their Protestant waspy upper class who was running the United States, and it's obvious in all the literature and everything in both countries, and then it spread to all the other parts of Western Europe.
What do you think is the main factor to explain all of this? Because you made a very good point that the Southern Slavs didn't move. They didn't really go about and start conquering large swaths of land, and also the fact, the reason...
That's not true. The Serbians and Croats built the nations on genocide, and it is factually true, and it's factually documented.
Why then the war was so horrible, and the different extermination campaigns is because Serbs and Croats and Bosniaks and so on were living right next to each other, not just village next to village, but within the villages they were living next to each other. So which obviously meant that for hundreds of years it was fine. It was okay to be next to each other until it wasn't, right?
No, we were not next to each other. That's also a false propaganda. Places where there were majority Bosnians, after the Austro-Hungarians came, they moved churches in, they moved people in. After the Turks came, they moved the Serbians in, who were called Vlah. In the documents, Ottoman documents, everybody can fucking go and fucking find this shit. They were all different empires, moved different Christian populations into Bosnia, but we were not infused. That happened in the later after Hungarians came, and then they started to infuse Catholics, and after Austro-Hungarians they fall, then came Yugoslavia, and then they pushed more Serbians in, and Serbians also stole lands and migrated into Bosnia, and you can see this throughout the Balkan wars and all kinds of things. Bruh, this is normal history. Everybody can go read.
And then it
His whole history is fake.
collapsed. But that's one thing of a people that stayed stable. One of the things these days that I kind of strikes me as very, very important is that the Western Europeans never stood stable. They always.
If you say something is yours, why the fuck are you needing to kill, plunder, exterminate, all that things for it to become your land? That means it is not your land. It's never been your land. So fuck, bro. Don't get me fucking started. This fake history. Fuck their mother.
Tried to go somewhere. They had crusades down to the Holy Lands on the one hand. They had campaigns to overthrow Russia, right? Napoleon maybe just being one of the largest at the time. And of course they went west. And then they exterminated people in the west, in North America. They just sat there, said it's our land, and then killed the people who were there before, through various means, and then expanded. I mean, that's the one thing that Western Europeans expanded. The physical territory that was under the control of people who looked like them. And of course they kept political rights very close.
Yeah, and the Russians did the same. That's just why Russia at one time owned Alaska. This fucking Harry Potter motherfucking looking idiot, either he's playing dumb or he is also a spy. That's the only two things I can think of.
To them, it took literally a war to expand it also to the black population, and like we can have an entire different discussion about how well developed those rights today are. But the others, they more or less stayed put. Do you think that has an influence also on this development of culture in certain places and the lack of culture in others, and the imitation, right? That the Supreme Court in so one of the United States is modeled after ancient Greek temples, which is kind of bizarre for a nation that's 250 years old, right? But a nation or a country, a political system. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I think that it's a clash. It's a psychological issue, I think, because they have this thing installed into themselves. I also have a whole bunch of lectures showing the development of this sense of superiority and the need to lead, like the white man's burden, as they call it. And I always protest because I don't consider myself white. Others do. I'm Serbian. I have different citizenships, but my ethnicity, my culture, my everything is Serbian, and I don't see myself. I don't see, well, other than general humanity and cultural background and all this stuff, but I'm different from the Swiss. I'm not equal to the Swedish or English or Portuguese or whatever, So don't put me in this, so it's the English upper class who developed this. And this necessity to feel superior, in spite of the fact that they were actually over centuries very inferior, and that they became rich and mighty through piracy, which we see coming up again. Trump said, we are like pirates. Except that you don't need the word like. We are pirates, we Americans. They are just robbing and grabbing. This is how Queen Elizabeth with Francis Drake and the others who stole the stolen gold through the genocide by the Spanish and the Portuguese from Latin America, from the native people, from the original races and nations who were very sophisticated and developed in their own way. Let's not be anachronistic and judge from our point of view today, because they have beautiful poetry like the Aztecs, so-called Aztecs, the Nahua. I actually translated a whole bunch of so-called ancient Aztec poetry into Serbian, trying to do the rhythm and everything, but they never published it, obviously, because I don't get anything published in Serbia. But anyway, it's very beautiful and all of this stuff. But they impose piracy internationally to steal from the French too, and the Portuguese and the Spanish especially, and then internally they impose the belief in witchcraft and eliminating witches, which if you study this, and there are lots of good studies and facts, it was not a religious thing at all. It was used like today when they talk about religious issues with Islam, for example, and all this stuff. It was the same thing. And it was very rarely the Catholic Church. Being Serbian, I'm not very friendly I'm very suspicious and very fearful of the Catholic Church hierarchy. Not ordinary Catholics who are, they just happen to be born into a Catholic family, just like I was born into a Serbian Orthodox. So I don't see them as enemy or anything. They're just people whom I have to meet.
Exactly. Both the churches know what they're doing. The churches are genocidal churches. That's basically it.
And then judge them based on my relationship with them and what they do. So, but the hierarchy, I have to defend. Most of the movies in the West, in the Hollywood, are against the Catholic Church burning witches. Very few witches were burned by the Catholics. Some crazy bishops, and the hierarchy said, no, this is superstition. It was the crazy, primitive English and Germans and barbaric Anglo-Saxons who did it.
The Protestants.
Yes.
The ones who split up.
Protestant craze that they did it. But you know why? Because there were lots of widows that they had to eliminate. elder women. And at that time, remember, it's not 60, 70, 80 years old. This was a 40-year-old woman who inherited from 3, 4 husbands who died before, lots of property, and it was useless in a woman's hands. So how do you get rid of her? Well, you get the last son of the last husband, or the firstborn son of the last husband from maybe a previous marriage, 3 wives before this woman who married, his mother married this man, and he wants his father's property, but it goes to this woman who now can marry somebody else, and he wants it. So it was a big coordination between the so-called Protestant church, which from the Orthodox view is heretical organization, to actually take away percentage like Henry VIII did the whole Reformation to just dispossess the Catholic Church, who was the greatest possessor of wealth and land in England, and he left his daughter Elizabeth I a magnificent kingdom, very rich in finance and growth potential, because he took somebody else's money. So these 2 things made them economically, financially, and politically powerful: piracy and hunting down witches, and then this religious view that they are superior because God has chosen them. But then still, read the documents from their descriptions of Russia, and don't go for the Western abridged versions where they only talk how Russians are smelly, stinky, primitive barbarians. But read the letters of their wives, for example, their mistresses, going back to France, to England, to other Western countries, talking about how, or the nannies who write back to France and to Germany and to England, how magnificent Russia is, and how they're shocked by the wealth and the enormity of this land and how sophisticated. They could not stand it. So the combination of this fake superiority, or religiously fanatically induced necessity for superiority, and then fear and envy. Because as I said before we started recording this, Slavs are the biggest chunk of the so-called white population, and we do not see ourselves as white. We see ourselves as Polish, Russian, Serbian, Croat, whatever. And this is the part of the European family of nations, if you want, in terms not of states, but nations, nationalities, ethnic groups, that is the only one remaining uninfected by all of this stuff that is destroying the Western nations. If they like it, this whole wokeness and everything else that they're doing in the West, if they think that is beneficial to them, that's fine. We don't care. But it's obvious to everybody in the world that it is destroying them. Look at the political structure in the West. It's falling apart. Look at the European Union, the so-called European Union. It is not European Union. They talk about Europe, and they do not have 2 biggest countries in Europe as part of the European Union. Russia is almost half of the European territory, and on the European side of Russia. The culture, if you tell me that it's not a sick group of people who forbid Tchaikovsky or Tolstoy or Dostoevsky and other Russian artists and writers and all this stuff, you can then whatever you want to believe, but people who cannot distinguish between past and present, they live in this warp that lots of people escape to, this mystic and esoteric kind of niche area on the internet where they talk about lizard people and the time warp and like all of this stuff. I think that Europeans mostly are in that because they confuse past and present. I was recently talking to some people about our Serbian writer, playwright and poet, a bishop prince of what is today Montenegro, but he considered himself Serbian, Njegoš, who actually was brought up in The Hague at the International Court of Justice, because this shows how sick and uneducated and primitive these people who are in these highest positions, who were going to bring up charges against Njegoš, who died in the middle of the 19th century, because in one of his poems he is describing the massacre between the the Caliphate at that time. People talk about the Ottoman Empire. Yes, it was Ottoman Empire, but it was actually the Islamic Caliphate who was trying to exterminate Serbs in Montenegro, what is today Montenegro. And this clash, and he described these events happened in the middle kind of 18th century, and he lived in the middle of the 19th century, first half. So he was describing this, and some of these lawyers, prosecutor's office in The Hague was going to bring up charges, and we have it's on YouTube. I think still I have it somewhere in my archives because I save everything because it's all scrubbed and eliminated. And they were talking about bringing up charges against these Serbian nationalists that probably people who write to you these emails will say, yes, it's our interpretation of this. Well, if a writer is describing, like the killings of the Jews in Auschwitz or whatever, and then you're claiming that this writer is a Nazi and we should actually ban his books because he described it so well that we actually almost feel like it's real, which was real, but anyway. And we confused. This tells you that these people are in this warp of time and space, that they cannot distinguish between past, present, and future, that they're completely messed up in their psychology, in their emotions, in everything else. This need to feel superior is projected then upon anybody who can be pointed at as nasty, evil, ugly, horrible, whatever, just so that I come out as good. And this is what we have seen in this wokeness, in this whole thing against Russia, against the Slavs, because I always show my Mexican students typical news items from Mexico. what they were complaining in the West about Trump, for example, saying he's saying that all Mexicans are rapists and lazy people who just come to live off of the benefits from, or Muslims come to Europe and live off these, like no Muslims work, in Europe. There are obviously people who take advantage of these things, but you set it up for them. The same thing in the United States. And then I tell them, like, okay, but Trump is only voicing what your media have been showing to you all the time, because when you look at the news from Mexico, they always show that like these ugly kind of murderous Mexican men who look kind of wild and nasty, and you don't trust them, and their women are always seen as kind of chubby, small, not really good looking, and everything. Mexico is full of beautiful people, like any place, Switzerland or Serbia or Japan, wherever. You can find ugly, you can find fat, you can find perfect, angelic looking people. It's just what you choose to see and what you choose to project. The same thing about Russia. When they showed Russian people, or as I mentioned earlier, remember Sochi Olympic Games, when they would show like all of these things that, let's see what happens in the United States now in the soccer thing that's coming up. Like we can always find probably a broken toilet and say, okay, America is falling apart. Yes, it's falling apart in certain places, but in certain places it's perfect. So these are like very limited views and very kind of stupid, I would say, approaches and acceptance by the general populace. So you create this vision of Mexicans as rapists and lazy and useless and just drunkards who make lots of noise. And of course there are some, but there are also beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful people who work hard and make a good life in America and who bring lots of values in culture and history and everything else. The same thing with Russia. If you concentrate on showing chubby, fat Russian women who in the 90s didn't take showers because there was no running water, obviously you're going to see ugly people. If you see Russians who are drunkards because they lost their jobs, their son got killed in Afghanistan because he was sent there, and they had only one child, and the father just gave up on life and is forgetting everything by getting drunk, like the middle class in America now with this fentanyl, just escaping the cruelty of modern American life. You can concentrate on that. So people show these videos of LA and American cities where these fentanyl addicts are like all twisted around themselves, like in ugly and smelly and all of this stuff. Yeah, that's also America, but there is also beautiful stuff. So it all depends. We should. The problem with everybody, this is, and I will finish with this, so then you can say something. I have a tendency to overtalk. One thing that I like from Marx is one famous quote when he says that the philosophers before Marx, or whoever talked about Marx, I don't remember who said this, but it was about Marx, tended to describe the world, but Marx and Marxists wanted to change it, So this is what we should do. We should try to organize people all over the world into these communities of intellectuals and really educated people who know how to organize political things, to actually work together to come to power and replace these idiots and these evil, nasty people in Switzerland, in Serbia. Like the Serbian government is one of the most corrupt, most evil, nasty people, murderers. They keep telling me that I'm over-exaggerating all the time, but the facts are telling us they're committing great treason all the time. They're murderers, literally, and they're thieves. So is European Union.
You're very good at distributing.
You know why he's mad at the Serbian politicians? Because they don't want to go to war. That's why he's mad.
Equally to everybody.
Well, they deserve it.
But I think if I had to boil down our discussion over the last hour, then it would be one about being aware of selective reality, how selective we get when we create these concepts, right? Be it from the national, who or what is my nationality, all the way to how we perceive other countries and how they're portrayed, like how the selectiveness of the realities we live in and how they then can clash when there's no need for clash if we just like broaden the goddamn picture. I very much enjoyed this, and we did reach the 1 hour mark. But can you tell me where people should go who would like to read more from you or listen to more of your analysis?
Unfortunately, I think this is just the second interview in English. I have given it to one of the alternative media that a friend of mine, the one I was telling you about, who wanted to recommend me to you, recommended, and that person called. But it's kind of like a niche group in the United States that is very anti-globalist and everything, which was very well received. And I got lots of emails and communications from these people. But they are very American nationalistic and concentrated only on America, and they cannot really see anything other than that. And they still think that they're the best and the only ones, and that they have a mission to save the world. So this is my second time in English, or other than Serbian. I have given like for the last 20 years, I think, or so. Whenever YouTube started, I was on, and I stopped giving interviews about a year and a half ago because they just want to talk about Vučić and the government, and I want to talk about solutions, like what we should do to actually, not to talk about what they have done to us, but what we can do to actually eliminate them and then actually correct everything and put together alliances with Croats and Muslims and Albanians and whoever to create a better environment and save ourselves collectively from Brussels and from the European Union and from the United States. But if you want to, I will give my email address and people can contact me, and I will send them PDFs of these books and everything, and maybe some other people will invite me for talks on these shows similar to yours, which I do want to say that I have watched almost every show of yours, and I always insist with my friends when we talk about you and your show, they all love your show and your guests. Sometimes we disagree and we have big discussions and everything, but generally they're very informative, very high level intellectually, and very decent, not very extremely decent and proper. But I always say, neutrality studies, just go back to Westphalia, to the origins of the international order of sovereign states in which we officially still live, and the Peace of Augsburg, Peace of Westphalia, Peace of Utrecht, and Peace of Tilsit, and you will have neutrality. If we go back to the balance of power, if we go back to respect of cuius regio eius religio, like don't get involved in other people's affairs, your country, my limit is my border, your border is sacrosanct, and I don't get involved in yours, you don't get involved in mine, and we negotiate. Remember the very good definition of diplomacy by René Albrecht, I always have problems with French, Carrier, who said that it is the management of the relations among sovereign nations through negotiations conducted by the appropriate agents, which we don't have anymore.
Yeah.
We have all sorts of not sovereign entities. What is the European Union? It's not a sovereign entity. And we yet have, even here in Mexico, an embassy of the European Union. Through appropriate agents, we use TikTok and Twitter or whatever Trump is using. This is not diplomacy. And then stop practicing this revolutionary diplomacy, in quotes, that has been practiced by Americans in the last 40 years, which destroys. This is why I named my book on Kosovo, of privatization in Kosovo, Kosovo, ground zero of the neoliberal world order. This is when it died. Not in Iraq, not in Afghanistan, not now in Gaza, in Iran. It died in Serbia in 99. In 95 in Bosnia when they bombed Serbs in Bosnia. That's when everything died. But we don't want to talk about it because it upsets those, they call them strawberries here because they're easily bruised. Las fresas, like snowflakes in the United States,
It's another discussion that we need to have, and we had planned to go to Kosovo, but we got absorbed by the rest of what we had to talk about the big picture. But I'm very grateful that we could do this. Anyone who wants to get in touch with you, I'm happy to connect you via email. And Višeslav Simić, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Pascal.
This guy, fuck his family, fuck his whole family. What can I say? Genocide, fucking motherfucker. That's pretty much it. Bullshit, Russian propaganda, nothing else. Waste of time. All of it was bullshit. Bullshit, a lot of bullshit. How the fuck was he professor? Oh yeah, he isn't because he got fired. Exactly. So this guy, big bullshit guy. Nothing he said is real. It's all fabricated fucking history.